Good morning, listeners. On this mighty Monday morning, we are privileged to be on the fifth day of November. Good morning to you, Theo. How are you?
Yeah, good morning. I'm very, very well, thank you. I'm excited for the new week. Well, I'm excited to be back at work. We had a brief holiday here in Sweden for the school's what is called a fall break. I don't know what breaks after the fall whether the fall breaks the. I don't know. I'm broken.
What breaks the fall?
I need a holiday to get over the last week. But I'm happy to be back here and good to be in this space, of course.
That is super. We're going to continue right along on this Monday morning in Colossians chapter 2. And we came out of verse 16 and 17 on Friday last week. And we're going to look at verse number 18 and 19 in the unfolding story across this letter of 4 chapters, because the writer, who's Paul the apostle, talks about in chapter 1 how to showcase skillful living, what showcasing skillful living looks like. And now in chapter 2, he's talking about shunning senseless living. Get away from it, avoid it. Don't get locked into ideological captivities, idolatrous ideas that you set up in your mind. Don't follow isms. Follow the way which is Christ. And so this morning we are going to look at bursting out of bunkers. What does that look like? Well, in the Middle East, the war continues to rage, and as Israel looks at protecting herself and the Iranian threat and the terrorist threat that is on her borders and right inside of her territories. She has to protect herself. And the production of weaponry, of bombs and bombers that are intended to destroy underground bunkers is very pronounced because Iran has middle range air defense systems, which is equipped with interceptors that can shoot down these bunker buster missiles that Israel fires. But these weapons are set on destroying underground military targets, underground military bunkers, which are concrete. They are reinforced concrete structures underground and in a series of tunnels, and they are meters underground. Some suggest between 80 to 100 meters below the Earth's surface. And in order to demobilize those kinds of weapons requires bombs that can penetrate deep down into the earth. And so what a task it is to get down to where the danger is and dismantle the dangerous weapons in these bunkers. Well, that's about as how difficult it is to break out of bunker mentalities, to break out of ideologies. These ideologies are isms, ISM small s, isms that captivate our minds and bend our thinking into a particular direction. They are what I call Luciferian left hemisphere captivators. Lucifer, as in Luciferian, left hemisphere, as in the left side of the brain, which is given to focusing in on the predator, focusing on the bitter food that needs to be eaten. And it locks on, and it is very difficult to lock off. And so, breaking out of these bunker mentalities provides believers with, I believe, opportunities for free and fresh expressions of life, free and fresh expressions of thinking. Why is it that when you've heard one preacher, you've heard them all? They sound the same. Their sermons flow like glue. When you ask the man or the woman in the pew, what did the preacher say? The response is, I don't have a clue. or they just remember the jokes. And so, how do Christians break out of bunker mentalities? Well, verse number 18 is an interesting passage because the writer says in verse 18, let no one disqualify you, insisting on asceticism and worship of angels, going on in detail about visions, puffed up without reason by his sensuous mind. Well, there's a number of partial verbal ideas. They are what we call in grammar participles. And a participle is a partial verbal idea. These people are insisting, they are detailing, and they are inflating. They are insisting, they are detailing, and they are inflating. They become inflated because knowledge puffs up. Knowledge without love, without the agapic connection or capacity, uh, increases the pressure bars in one's head, in one's soul, and you take off. You lose touch with reality. And those who are given to ideologies, it's interesting that when an ideology encounters reality, listen how I'm saying this, when ideology encounters reality, you know what it does? It just distorts that reality. It twists that reality. We see that in the whole transing debate. You can choose your gender. Gender is a choice, they say. It's an imitation with no original. Gender is a choice. It's an imitation without an original. In other words, there's no biological ground to stand on, according to the transing community. And we play these linguistic games because you see, linguistically we can change pronouns, but biologically we can't. And so when an ideology hits reality or a reality, it cannot make head or tail out of it, and so it twists that reality. And that reality gets bent. And so verse 18 talks about avoid disqualification because of locking into a system of thinking. Now, men and women, this is an extremely difficult thing to do. Avoid disqualification because people are going to try to get you to lock into the in group. So just sign the doctrinal statement. Sign up for the creeds and the confessions that we have, and you'll be fine. Locking into a system of thinking. I had an experience as a young person where I had to break out of a particular ideology which would cost me great sacrifice. It would cost me my life. I had to break out of an ideology of a domineering mom, a mom who had the whip hand. Because you see, Terry Martin could not think for himself because of a dominating mother. She loved us, no doubt. But I had to make a choice which would threaten my own well being. But I had to break out of it because I would not, up until that point, I was not able to make independent decisions as a 23-year-old to stand on my two hind legs. And so I share that with you because it is very, very difficult. There's a high price to pay to break out of systems thinking because systems work well for machines. And man is not a machine. If you're a naturalist, materialist, then you believe man is purely a machine. The difficulty with that model is that you can switch a machine on and off. You can switch it off tonight, and tomorrow morning you can get back to the machine and you can switch it back on. Well, you can't do that with a human being, can you now? Switch off that human being, all the life functions cease, and 24 hours later, you fire up that life again. And so avoid becoming disqualified, put on the shelf, left to dry and become dry as dust because you lock into a systemic way of thinking and you can't think outside of the box. I don't care how sacred that box looks like. It can put a three-piece suit on you. It can put a collar and tie on to you, and you can look very pious. And you can put on a preacher's tone and sound pious, but it ain't gonna change you on the inside. And so to avoid systems thinking is a toughie. But what will get you to break out of it? And in the time that I have left, I want us to look very briefly at a couple of ways that we could break out of this grip of systems thinking. The text goes on in verse number 18 to tell us that the importance to realize here is uh, when we lose our connection, when we lose our connection with the head, verse number 18, we are not holding fast to the head. Who's the head? Well, the antecedent is Christ in verse number 17. The substance belongs to Christ. Shadow living is what ideologies get us to lock in on. The substance is Christ, and when we lose contact with the head, we become like headless chickens. You ever seen a headless chicken? Wow, we watched our parents lop off the heads of chickens that were going to be roasted, get roasted. They would be part of um, the eating regimen of the weekend. Well, you let go of that chicken, it will run. It's amazing how easy it is to lose contact with the head, which is Christ. When you lose contact with the head, you'll be given to systems thinking. You will not be given to the way which is Christ, the way that is Christ, because from that head, the whole body, nourished and knit together through its joints and ligaments, grows. Watch the operative words: nourished, knit together, and grows. The word there for nourish is a very interesting word. It has to do with feeding, a very garden image, if you will, to be feeding yourself, to be nourishing yourself, holding on to the head. That's tenacity. Uh, Being knit together, that is the unity aspect, right? And then that word from which we get the word choreography, epikore gumenoi, epihorego menos. It's a participle, it's a partial verbal idea. And a choreographer choreographs movement in time with music and steps. So as this body functions, well choreographed, each one knows his or her function in that modality, in that assembly. They are moving towards a unified goal of growing together. What does it mean to hold on and grow together? Well, we have that word. We all know what a toxin is. A toxin is a chemical poison. This word here is the word auxin. What is an auxin? The opposite of a toxin. We call them growth sticks. Those of you who have green fingers know that the way to get a plant to grow is push or shove in these growth sticks into the ground, and it will cause the life of the plant to grow. Auxano is the word. It brings about an increase of growth. Ideologies don't get you to grow. You just sink your teeth. Your mental roots get sunk deeper and deeper into the ideology, and you become an avatar of a particular system of thinking. You cannot do fresh, creative thinking for yourself. You do proxy thinking because you quote the gurus. That's all you can do. So, what will it take you to burst out of your bunker? A bunker of churchified thinking, domesticated thinking, maritally locked, stale thinking, and the marriage is tottering and dying. Well, we need to learn how to think well, and that is a great enterprise. And so, Theo, back to you as you play us out with a song.
Yeah, and I have the sense that we'll probably need to linger on here a little bit longer. There's so much to chew on. Terry, we'll get back to this as the
We
week
will. We
unfolds,
will.
right? We have
We will.
no rush to get through the book without the book getting through us or through to us.
Yes, that's for sure.
Yeah, thank
That's
you
for
so
sure.
very much for that, and thank you, listeners, for joining us. We found a song by Richard Smallwood called "The Scent of My Joy," and this is a live performance in one of those Gaither gatherings that you may have spotted online. Thank you so very, much for joining us today. Terry, I wish you a wonderful